Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's been 7 years since the last video, which is about my brain surgery. So I thought I would give you guys a little health update, story time of what's been going on with my thyroid. Here we go. Back in 2021, I took a road trip to Wisconsin to visit a friend. As I was driving back, I was driving in the middle of the Twin Cities during rush hour. It was a bit stressful. And while that was happening, I suddenly started feeling pins and needles in my face, across my cheekbones, and my nose almost felt like it was vibrating. I remembered how my mom described her experience with seizures and realized that it felt a lot like what she was describing. So immediately I pulled over to the next gas station and I called my mom and I said, "Am I having a seizure right now? Like, should I be worried? What should I do?" And she said, "I think you're probably fine. Just wait a little while, wait till it goes away, and then keep your drive going." And so that's what I did. Over the next several days, I kept having the pins and needles in my face, and it was kind of freaking me out. So I made an appointment with my neurologist, who I've been seeing since before my brain surgery, and went in and had a talk with him. I told him what was going on, and he decided to order a brain and cervical spine MRI. He also ordered some blood work. So I went and I had the MRI. I've never had a spine MRI before, so that was a little bit different. And then I had a follow up with him about 3 days later. He said, "Your MRI looks perfectly clear. You're fine. This could be a vitamin deficiency. We'll see." So my blood work that he ordered came back, and I was a little low on vitamin D. So he put me on a replacement program where he had me taking over, I think, 10,000 IU of vitamin D every day for a week. And then now I take 5,000 IU every day. So then a few days after my follow-up with my neurologist, he called me and he said, "So I hadn't really looked closely at your thyroid when I was looking at your MRI. And it turns out that the radiologist reported that your thyroid is enlarged and has nodules on it." And I was sitting there on my phone thinking, "Do I have cancer?" And the first thing he said was, "I don't think it's cancer, but you should see your primary care provider about it." And that was that. I hung up and I made an appointment with some random doctor in my town because I didn't actually have a primary care provider. While I was waiting for that appointment, I messaged my psychiatrist and said, "Hey, I was just told that there's something wrong with my thyroid, and I was wondering if you would order some thyroid levels so we could see what's going on." This was something I could do because I already previously had my thyroid levels checked several times because of my psychiatrist, because I'm on a medication called lithium, which can cause problems with the thyroid. So she ordered the thyroid level and I went in. So now the normal thyroid levels, they range from, I think, 1.5 units of measurement to 5.5 units of measurement. I think it's something close to that. So I got my blood results back right away, and it turned out that my TSH level, which is a hormone your brain releases to signal to your thyroid to release its hormones, was a 63.43 units of measurement. So I had about 12 times the maximum amount of TSH that I should have in my blood. So then I go to that primary care provider appointment and I tell her about my blood levels. She was like, "Whoa." She filled my thyroid. She said it was very big, and she told me the plan. She was going to have me have an ultrasound on my thyroid. Based off of that ultrasound, she may or may not refer me to an endocrinologist. Now, she also said, "I am probably going to refer you to the endocrinologist." So she prepared me a little bit. So I went in and I had the thyroid ultrasound, and of course, she did refer me to the endocrinologist. So I went in to him, told him what had happened up to that point, and he decided, based on what my ultrasound looked like, that I needed to have a biopsy on my thyroid. So I went 6 weeks later to have the biopsy done. So during those 6 weeks, I had been given medication for my thyroid and I took it every day. So I went in and got in the chair to have the ultrasound started, because with the biopsy, they use the ultrasound to guide it. So the radiologist had the ultrasound tech do another ultrasound. And the radiologist was a bit surprised. He said, "You've been taking the medication?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Okay, so here's the deal. In your last ultrasound, it looked like you had a really big, like 4 centimeter nodule on your thyroid, which is very suspicious for cancer. But it turns out that you don't have one big nodule. You actually have several smaller nodules in your thyroid. So, because of that, all of those nodules were small enough that I no longer qualified for needing a biopsy. So I went in, prepared for a biopsy, had an ultrasound, and walked away." So then he scheduled a 3-month follow-up ultrasound. So 3 months went by, I came back, and they did the 3-month ultrasound. They said that I still didn't need a biopsy, and they scheduled for the following January with my endocrinologist. So time went by, and it turned out that before my follow-up with my endocrinologist, I was experiencing a pressing feeling on my throat. I felt like I needed to clear my throat very often, and it was just uncomfortable. So I contacted my endocrinologist and said, like, "Hey, this is going on." So when I did that, he ordered another ultrasound. So I had the ultrasound done, and indeed my thyroid nodules had grown since my last one, and now I did qualify for needing a biopsy. So I went in for this biopsy a little while later. The radiologist was the one who did it. So basically, they take this needle. They have the ultrasound guiding so you can see where you're doing things. They take a needle, they stick it in your throat where those nodules are, and then they just shake it. They take the needle and just like go like this a bunch. And obviously they numbed me before that. They used like a lidocaine and, whatever. I barely felt anything. But the radiologist did 6 passes of this biopsy. He tried, and he kept getting water and not getting enough cells. So he did 6 passes, and then he was like, "Okay, I'm done with this now. We'll see if we can get enough cells to diagnose you." So a couple days later, no, the answer was no. There were not enough cells for the pathologist to do any kind of analysis. So I remained undiagnosed. So then, after that first failed biopsy, I went into my endocrinologist to talk to him for a while, and he said, "I'm going to refer you to the ENT." The ENT is a kind of surgeon who, obviously has a lot of experience of doing things like that biopsy, because ENT stands for ear, nose, and throat. That's the kind of doctor they are. So I said, okay. 5 weeks later, I finally got to have my consult appointment with the ENT, expecting for him to schedule the biopsy afterward. But it turned out, instead, the ENT was like, "Let's just do it now." So right there in his office, he did another biopsy of my thyroid. And this time, it turned out that the cells came back as suspicious for neoplasm, meaning not necessarily benign. So when that happened, the ENT said, "I really don't think that this is cancer based off of what I have seen, But we could do a hemispherectomy and remove that part of your thyroid, or we could do some genetic testing and see what those cells look like if we have enough cells to work with. So I said, I'm actually a professional singer. You might not be able to tell right now because I have a cold, but the last thing I want to do is cut into my throat and have one of the nerves or something get damaged and not be able to sing anymore. So of course I said, let's do the genetic testing, and he agreed. And that took a while too. They had to send my cell. First they had to see if there were enough cells in the first place. Then they had to send my cells somewhere else. That's where they did the genetic testing. They did the genetic testing and it came back as low risk for cancer. So, I think they said it was a 25% chance that it was cancer. So not very likely at all. So that was good. And it was just another one of those times where it was just like, okay, we'll schedule a follow-up for 3 months and then we'll go from there. So we did that. And I went in for another biopsy because when I had my follow-up ultrasound, one of my nodules had grown to the point where it hit something called TIRADS 5. So TIRADS is a scoring system that they use to describe how likely it is that a thyroid nodule is cancerous. Now, TIRADS 5 is the highest likelihood that I had thyroid cancer because of the different characteristics of my nodules. So when that happened, I went in for this next biopsy, and it was with the doctor I'd never worked with before because I was actually in my parents' hometown at this point. So I went in, or I guess my hometown, where my parents lived. Anyway, I went in, and when he did this biopsy, he didn't just it's called the fine needle aspiration, if anyone's wondering, where they do the weird, jiggling thing with the needle. He did that, but he also did something else with this weird, spring-loaded, gun thing with a needle in it. And he took, I believe, 6 core samples. So instead of just the kind of superficial biopsies of my nodules, he went into those nodules and got, cells from the core of them. So, and he was like, so now you're not gonna have any more of these, we don't know what it is kind of things. He's like, I guarantee you're gonna have the answer of whether or not it's cancer, and we'll be done with this. And I was like, great. So it did come back as completely benign. I did not have thyroid cancer. And this was good news for more than one reason. First of all, cancer means you have to have surgery, the end. There's not anything else you can do other than just leaving it, which some people do. And actually there's a pretty high success rate of people just surviving having thyroid cancer, because thyroid cancer is very slow growing and moving, and the only time it really actually gets dangerous, as far as I know, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, it really only starts to get dangerous when it leaves the thyroid and hits the lymph nodes. So everything was okay, except I was still really having discomfort and saying this is affecting my singing and, these different things to the endocrinologist. And that's when he first suggested doing something called radiofrequency ablation. So radiofrequency ablation is when they take a probe and they put it in the nodules and do some weird science thing to heat them up and cause them to start breaking down. So I was like, yeah, I'll do that. I had to travel in order to do so. It was the school year. I had begun my music studies at a university 3 hours away from where all my doctors were. But I agreed. And so I went into that town to speak with the radiologist who would be in charge of that. He was a little bit hesitant. He said, this is very low risk, but, there are risks and that kind of thing. Your nodules actually aren't that big in comparison to a lot of people's. They get really big and it makes it hard for them to swallow and that kind of thing. So, but he knew that it was affecting my voice and that kind of thing. So he told me that he was going to send the orders for that procedure through my insurance and see if it was covered. And it was. But he still wanted to do one more thing. He said, I looked more closely at your ultrasounds and your pathology, and I would really like you to speak to the ENT before doing this. He didn't elaborate, but I think there might have been a little bit in him that was concerned that it actually was cancer, because when you have cancer, you're not supposed to do the what is it called? RFA. So I said, all right. I was a little disappointed, but I went in and saw the ENT, who was the same one who did the biopsy in his office. And I talked to him about how it'd been affecting me and that kind of thing. And he said, yeah, like, I want to do this. And he had noticed that I've been clearing my throat. And he said, let's do a laryngoscopy. So this is 2 times in a row now that I've gone to this ENT and he has chosen to do a procedure at the same time. Like, so first I went and I thought I was just going to talk to him and he had a biopsy. And all this time I go in and I talk to him and he wants to do a laryngoscopy, which I'll tell you what, it was unpleasant. In case you don't know, a laryngoscopy is when they take a little camera that's connected to a wire and well, first they numb you with this disgusting stuff that tastes terrible because it literally goes up your nose and down your throat. But then they take this wire with the camera in it and they put it up your nose and down your throat into your voice box. So we did that and he showed me the images and he said that there was something called the retinoid process, maybe, which is like above, right where your vocal cords are. And he said that he could see like hardening or like thickening of that process, and that because of that thickening of that wall, when my vocal cords were hitting each other, instead of hitting each other like this, like they were supposed to, they were hitting each other like this, like they were supposed to. So all the throat clearing that I've been done because of my thyroid, at least in my opinion, because of my thyroid, had caused some actual damage to my voice box, which, again, I'm a professional singer. I need my voice. So he was like, yeah, second opinion, I'm giving you the second opinion that you should do the RFA, the radio frequency ablation. So we got that scheduled and I went in. And this time around, my mom came with, because it turns out that the RFA isn't just some simple procedure. It's not like a biopsy where they just stick the needle in and jiggle it for a while. It was like a long, I think about maybe 45-minute process. I was in the hospital for about 3 hours. They had me in a recovery room and everything. So I went in, I had that done, and they actually did put me to sleep. They didn't put me like unconscious out like they do with general anesthesia, but they did use fentanyl and Versed, and really, like, I just slept through the whole thing. It was like the best nap I've ever had in my life. So I kind of woke up, got back in the recovery room. I was in pain and I was also very nauseated. So they brought me some food and Tylenol, and I was there for a few hours with my mom, and that was the end of that. So that was back in May. It was May 20th, and it is August 9th right now. So I'm basically just waiting for, again, a follow-up ultrasound to see if the RFA worked. And then, I mean, I think it did. I feel like I can already notice a difference with my voice. Not right now because I have a cold, but I'm going to get to see the results of that little surgical procedure. And I'm really excited because I do think that there were good results. I'm not going to have to go in for these biopsies anymore, or, be worried that I'm going to have my throat cut into or anything like that. So I didn't really talk about my conversation with the endocrinologist. So here's what I'll say. I asked him if what was going on with my thyroid could be happening because of my taking lithium? And he said no. He said, lithium does cause hypothyroidism, but he's never seen it cause something so severe with all the nodules that I had. And so that's when he decided, my diagnosis was Hashimoto's thyroiditis. So basically that means that my immune system is attacking my thyroid, and that's why it was so inflamed before. And it had been really inflamed when I just started out, but taking medication cleared up that blood flow so that the radiologist could see that I actually had more than one nodule and all of that. So really all I have to do from now on is take my thyroid hormone replacements, which I've been doing every day, and if something goes wrong, contact my endocrinologist. But for the most part, I just have these follow-up ultrasounds. I think this next one may be the second to last one I ever have, and then that's just the end. I hope, I pray to God that's the end. But anyway, this has been a really long video. I mean, I'm sure you can tell that there's been a lot of ups and downs and yeses and nos and weird things going on in my life for 3 years. But here I am. I'm still in school. I'm still singing, and I hope that you all are doing very well. I appreciate all of the kind comments on my video about my brain surgery, and stay subscribed if you'd like. I'm sure there will be an update at some point. And yeah, again, thank you very much, and have a good time. Bye.